I discovered a pattern of fraudulent transactions while working as a junior analyst. When I showed my boss the evidence, he looked nervous. "These clients are too valuable. Let it go," he ordered. The next day, I was laid off for restructuring reasons. I cleared my desk without protest. On my way out, I made one final stop. My name is Matthew Shaw. I was 28 years old and had been a junior financial analyst at Westbrook Investment Partners in Denver for just under 2 years. I spent most days with my head buried in spreadsheets looking for discrepancies that others might miss. I wasn't exceptional at office politics. I rarely joined happy hours. What I was good at was numbers. Numbers don't lie, and patterns don't hide if you know where to look. That's why the Harley Group accounts bothered me. Small inconsistencies at first. Invoice amounts that didn't match our records. Payment routing numbers that cycled through the same 3 destinations. Vendor names that appeared legitimate but had no websites, no addresses I could verify. Curtis Brandt was my direct manager. Nice corner office, expensive golf clubs leaning against his credenza. When I knocked on his door that Tuesday afternoon, folder tucked under my arm, he waved me in without looking up from his computer. "What's up, Shaw?" I placed the folder on his desk. I found something strange in the Harley accounts. His eyes flicked to the folder, then back to me. Strange how? I pointed to the highlighted sections. "These transactions are going through shell companies. Same routing patterns, same inflated amounts. It's systematic." Curtis flipped through the pages, his expression hardening with each turn. When he closed the folder, his hand lingered on it for a moment too long. "These clients are too valuable. Let it go," he said. I didn't argue, just nodded. Understood. What he didn't know was that I had already created digital copies of everything. Something in his voice told me I might need them. The next morning, Heather from Human Resources called me in. The company was restructuring. My position was being eliminated. Nothing personal. A severance check would be deposited. "Please clean out your desk by noon." No one looked at me as I packed my things. Odd how quickly you become invisible. I moved to Denver 3 years ago after finishing my master's degree in financial analysis. My grandmother had left me enough money to pay off my student loans, but not much else. She always told me, "Trust your gut, Matthew. Numbers may not lie, but people sure do." She'd raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Westbrook Investment Partners wasn't my dream job, but it was a solid firm with a good reputation. I kept my head down, worked 60-hour weeks, and built a reputation as reliable, if not remarkable. Curtis hired me himself, said he liked my attention to detail. "People miss things," he'd told me during the interview. "I need someone who doesn't." Looking back, there were signs something wasn't right. The Harley Group accounts were untouchable. Only specific people handled their transactions. Questions about their portfolio were deflected or met with vague answers. Once, I overheard Curtis on the phone saying, No one's asking questions. It's handled exactly how we discussed." I ignored those red flags. I was building something here: respect, a career, financial stability. I didn't want complications. There was a senior analyst, Jennifer Riley, who worked in compliance 2 floors down. We'd crossed paths occasionally in the break room. She had a reputation for being meticulous, even intimidating. Once she'd stopped by my desk to check a discrepancy I'd flagged in a different account. "Good catch," she'd said, eyeing my cubicle with its neat stacks of papers. "Not everyone bothers to look this closely." "Just doing my job," I'd replied. She'd studied me for a moment. "Keep doing it that way." Then she'd handed me her card. "If you ever see something that doesn't add up, my door is open." I'd kept her card in my wallet behind my driver's license. Never thought I'd need it. There was another warning sign I'd missed. 2 months ago, another analyst, Trevor, had been fired suddenly. Office rumor was he'd been asking too many questions about certain accounts. I'd assumed he'd messed up somehow, made a serious error. Now I wondered if he'd seen what I'd seen. The day before I discovered the pattern, Curtis had invited me to lunch. Unusual. He'd never done that before. He asked about my career goals, whether I was happy at Westbrook, said I had potential. Looking back, I think he was testing me, seeing if I could be trusted to stay quiet. I failed his test without knowing it was being administered. The morning after I was fired, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen. I'd forwarded copies of the Harley Group files to my personal email before leaving. Not the smartest move legally, but my gut told me something bigger was happening. I created a spreadsheet tracking all the transactions I'd flagged. Over 6 months, more than $4 million had moved through those shell companies. I hadn't seen the full picture at work, but now, looking at it all laid out, the pattern was unmistakable. Someone was laundering money through our firm, and Curtis knew about it. My phone buzzed. A text from Alicia, another analyst from Westbrook. Heard what happened. Crazy they cut you without warning. Drinks tonight? I didn't respond. I couldn't explain what I was thinking, and I wasn't sure who to trust anymore. I pulled out my wallet and found Jennifer Riley's card. Her direct line was printed underneath her email. My finger hovered over my phone. What would this accomplish? I was already fired. Fighting a mid-sized investment firm would be expensive, exhausting, and possibly career-ending. I'd be labeled a troublemaker. Maybe I should just move on, find another job, forget what I'd seen. My apartment felt suddenly small. I grabbed my keys and went for a drive. Ended up at the park where my grandmother used to take me when I visited her as a kid. I sat on a bench watching joggers pass by, dogs chasing frisbees. Trust your gut, Matthew. I could almost hear her voice. What did my gut tell me now? That something wrong was happening. That people with money were breaking rules and hurting others. That Curtis had chosen his side, and it wasn't the right one. And that I had a choice to make. When I got home, I printed out all the documents, 317 pages. I organized them chronologically, added tabs for each suspicious client, and wrote a summary of what I'd found. Then I placed everything in a large manila envelope. I didn't feel angry anymore, just calm, clear. I sent one email to Jennifer Riley, short and to the point. I found something you should see. Can we meet tomorrow? Her response came 20 minutes later. My office, 9 a.m. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Jennifer's office was smaller than I'd expected. No window, just walls lined with filing cabinets and regulatory manuals. She gestured to the chair across from her desk as I closed the door behind me. I'm no longer employed here, I said, placing the envelope on her desk. But I thought someone should know about this. She didn't open it right away. Tell me what I'm looking at first. I explained what I'd found. The shell companies, the routing patterns, the inflated invoices. How Curtis had told me to drop it and how I'd been fired the next day for restructuring reasons. Jennifer's expression didn't change as she listened. When I finished, she opened the envelope and began scanning the documents. You kept copies of internal financial records, she said finally. Not a question. Yes. That's against company policy, potentially illegal. I know. She studied me for a long moment. What do you want out of this, Matthew? Nothing. I just couldn't walk away knowing what was happening. Jennifer sighed and closed the folder. I'll look into it, but I can't promise anything. She slid the envelope into her desk drawer. And you should know, this could come back on you. Hard. I stood to leave. I understand. Do you? Westbrook has powerful clients and expensive lawyers. If you're right about this, people will lose their jobs, maybe go to jail. They'll fight dirty. They already fired me. What else can they do? I got my answer 3 days later. A certified letter from Westbrook's legal department arrived at my apartment. They were accusing me of theft of proprietary information, breach of confidentiality, and defamation. They demanded I return all company documents immediately and sign a statement retracting any accusations I'd made about improprieties. The letter ended with a thinly veiled threat. Failure to comply would result in pursuing all available legal remedies. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Matthew, it's Curtis. We need to talk. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. I don't think that's a good idea. Look, things got out of hand. I know you're upset about losing your job, but this isn't the way to handle it. If you drop this now, we can work something out. Maybe even get you back on the team. What team would that be, Curtis? The one that looks the other way while clients launder money? Silence on the line. Then, you have no idea what you're talking about, or who you're dealing with. These people... He stopped himself. Just meet me for coffee. 15 minutes. No thanks. You're making a mistake, Shaw. A big one. After I hung up, I called a lawyer. The consultation fee was almost a full day's pay from my old salary, but I needed to know where I stood. The attorney, Elaine Donovan, specialized in corporate whistleblower cases. She listened to my story without interruption. You've put yourself in a precarious position, she said when I finished. But if what you're saying is true, there are protections for whistleblowers. The problem is proving retaliation when they've couched your termination as a restructuring. So I should just back down? Let them get away with it? She leaned forward. I didn't say that. I said it's precarious. We'll need more evidence linking your termination directly to your discovery. On my way home, I noticed a black sedan parked across from my apartment building. The same car had been behind me when I left the lawyer's office. Could be coincidence, could be paranoia, or it could be that I'd stumbled into something much bigger than I realized. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Curtis had said. These people. Who was he afraid of? The clients? Someone inside Westbrook? I pulled out my laptop and began researching the Harley Group more thoroughly. They were a private equity firm with investments in real estate, emerging markets, and several industries I'd never heard of. Their CEO was Thomas Harley, a man who rarely appeared in the press and had no social media presence. The company website was sleek but vague about their actual holdings. Then I found something. A small news item from 3 years ago, before I joined Westbrook. The Harley Group had been under SEC investigation for potential securities fraud. The case had been abruptly dropped. No explanation given. I dug deeper. Found an archived article mentioning that the lead SEC investigator had suddenly retired mid-investigation. Coincidence? A knock at my door startled me. It was nearly midnight. I peered through the peephole. Jennifer Riley stood in the hallway looking tense. "Can I come in?" she asked when I opened the door. I stepped aside. She entered quickly, glancing behind her before I closed the door. "Were you followed?" I asked, only half joking. She didn't smile. "Maybe, I'm not sure." She placed her bag on my kitchen counter and pulled out a flash drive. "I found more. A lot more. You just scratched the surface." She connected the drive to my laptop. Folders appeared labeled by date going back 5 years. "The Harley accounts aren't the only ones," she said, opening documents. "There are at least 3 other client groups running similar schemes, all high value, all protected. Protected by who?" Jennifer looked me in the eye. "By Jonathan Westbrook himself." Jonathan Westbrook, the founder and CEO of the firm, the man whose name was on the building. "How high does this go?" I asked. "The CFO is definitely involved. Probably the head of client services, too. They've been moving money offshore using our firm to make it look legitimate." I sank onto my couch. "Why are you showing me this? Why not go to the authorities?" "I needed to be sure first, and..." She hesitated. "I needed someone else who knew. Someone outside the company. Insurance." "Insurance against what?" 3 years ago, an analyst named David Weber found something similar. He went to the SEC directly. 2 days later, he was in a car accident. Didn't survive. My mouth went dry. "You think..." "I don't know what to think." But his notes mentioned the Harley Group specifically. I stared at the screen, at the web of transactions and names. This wasn't just fraud. This was organized, systematic, protected at the highest levels. "What do we do now?" I asked. Jennifer closed the laptop. "We go to someone who can't be bought, someone outside their sphere of influence." She pulled a business card from her pocket and placed it on the table. Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have a contact, she said. Someone who specializes in financial crimes. But once we do this, there's no turning back. For either of us. I thought about Curtis's warning, about the black sedan, about David Weber. When do we meet them? I asked. Tomorrow, if you're in. I nodded. I'm in. After Jennifer left, I copied all the files from her flash drive, then hid it behind a loose baseboard in my bathroom. Insurance of my own. That night I packed a bag and didn't sleep in my apartment. Some instincts you learn to trust. The FBI office was unmarked, tucked away in a nondescript government building downtown. Agent Tessa Harding didn't look like the FBI agents in movies. No suit, no stern expression. Just a woman in her 40s with practical shoes and tired eyes. Tell me everything, she said. From the beginning. For the next 2 hours, Jennifer and I laid out what we knew. The shell companies, the money movement, the selective access to certain accounts, the retaliation, the possibility that this connected to an earlier investigation. Agent Harding took notes, asked pointed questions, and occasionally made phone calls to verify specific details. When we finished, she sat back in her chair. If you're right, this is a major case. Money laundering on this scale usually involves other criminal enterprises, drug trafficking, corruption, tax evasion. So you'll investigate? Jennifer asked. We already are. Your information corroborates something we've been building for months. She looked at me. But we'll need your testimony. That means going on record, possibly in court eventually. I thought about my career prospects after being known as the guy who brought down his former employer, about Curtis's warning, about my grandmother's voice in my head. I'll do it. Agent Harding nodded. We'll need to move carefully. These people have resources and connections. For now, tell no one about this meeting. She handed each of us a card with just a phone number. If anything unusual happens, anything at all, call this number immediately. As we left the building, Jennifer touched my arm. You should consider staying somewhere else for a while, just until this breaks. I'd already been staying at a budget hotel for 2 nights. Ahead of you there. Smart. She smiled slightly. You know, when Curtis hired you, he told everyone you were too quiet to make waves. Looks like he misjudged you. He's not the first. That afternoon, I got a job interview at a smaller financial firm across town. I didn't mention Westbrook's accusations or the FBI investigation, just highlighted my skills and experience. The hiring manager seemed impressed, said they'd be in touch. 3 days later, as I was leaving the hotel, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Parking garage, level 3, blue Honda, 20 minutes. No name. But only one person knew I was staying at this hotel, Jennifer. I debated calling Agent Harding, but decided to check it out first. I took precautions, parked 1 level up, approached on foot, stayed near the stairwell. The blue Honda was there. Driver's side window rolled down. But it wasn't Jennifer behind the wheel. It was Trevor, the analyst who'd been fired before me. Get in, he said. Quickly. I hesitated. Please. It's about Jennifer. I slid into the passenger seat. How did you find me? Jennifer told me where you were staying. Yesterday, before they took her in. My stomach dropped. Took her in? Who? Westbrook Security. They're saying she stole confidential client information. She's being questioned by their legal team right now. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, I know what you both found. I saw it too 6 months ago. That's why I got fired. Why are you here now? Because Jennifer helped me when no one else would. And because what's happening at Westbrook is bigger than we thought. He handed me a USB drive. This has account information for offshore holdings, copies of altered financial statements, and recordings of conversations between Westbrook executives and Harley Group representatives. Jennifer managed to get it out before they locked down her computer. I stared at the small device. Why not take this to the FBI yourself? Because Westbrook has people everywhere, even in law enforcement. Jennifer thought you might have a contact we could trust. He looked at me. Do you? I thought of Agent Harding, her tired eyes, her immediate recognition of what we'd brought her. Yes, I said. I think I do. I called the number on Harding's card from Trevor's car, told her what had happened to Jennifer. Within an hour, we were in a different FBI office with different agents creating a secure copy of Trevor's files. By evening, things moved quickly. Jennifer was picked up by FBI agents as she left Westbrook's offices, ostensibly for her protection. Warrants were being prepared, and I was being moved to a secure location until everything broke. The last person I called was my lawyer, Elaine. They're making their move tomorrow, I told her. I need you there with me. I'll be there, she said. And Matthew? Whatever happens, you did the right thing. That night, alone in an anonymous hotel room provided by the FBI, I thought about how quickly life can change. 3 weeks ago, I was just an analyst doing my job. Now I was at the center of what Agent Harding called one of the biggest financial fraud cases of the year. I didn't feel scared anymore, just ready. The raid happened at 9:02 a.m. on a Tuesday. FBI agents entered Westbrook Investment Partners through every available entrance. As they secured the building, other teams simultaneously executed search warrants at the homes of Jonathan Westbrook, the CFO, and 3 senior partners. They also arrived at the Harley Group headquarters in downtown Denver. I watched from Agent Harding's car, parked across the street. Employees streamed out of the building, looking confused. Some were being interviewed by agents on the sidewalk. Others just stood in groups, checking their phones, trying to understand what was happening. Then I saw him, Curtis Brandt, being escorted to a black SUV, no handcuffs but clearly not going willingly. His face was tight with anger or fear, maybe both. He's cooperating, Agent Harding said beside me. First one to flip, trying to cut a deal. Of course he was. I almost laughed. Curtis looked up as the SUV pulled away from the curb. For just a moment, our eyes met through the 2-car windows. He didn't look surprised to see me, just defeated. By afternoon, the news had broken nationally. Major investment firm raided in fraud investigation. The coverage mentioned a whistleblower who had uncovered the scheme. My name wasn't public yet, but it would be soon. Jennifer called me from her lawyer's office. They're offering immunity to lower-level employees who cooperate, she said. The executives aren't so lucky. Jonathan Westbrook was arrested at his home. They found shredded documents in his fireplace. What about the Harley Group? Thomas Harley is nowhere to be found. Left the country last week, apparently, but they've frozen the company's assets. 2 days later, I sat in a federal prosecutor's office going through my testimony again. The evidence was overwhelming. The documents Trevor and Jennifer had saved. My original findings. Banking records seized in the raid. And now, statements from at least 6 Westbrook employees who had witnessed parts of the scheme but been afraid to come forward. The prosecutor, a serious woman named Diane Lawrence, closed her folder. Mr. Shaw, your testimony is crucial to this case, but I want you to understand what you're walking into. Defense attorneys will try to paint you as disgruntled, incompetent, or motivated by revenge. It won't be pleasant. I understand. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Curtis's warning, about Jennifer being detained by Westbrook security, about David Weber, who might have been silenced permanently. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. The first indictments came down a week later. Jonathan Westbrook, the CFO, and 2 senior partners were charged with multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Curtis was charged as well, but with lesser charges, thanks to his cooperation. The morning the indictments were announced, I received a job offer from the firm I'd interviewed with earlier. They'd heard about my role in the case through industry channels. The offer came with a significant raise and a direct message from the CEO. We need more people with integrity. I accepted. The last piece fell into place a month later. A letter arrived from the SEC's whistleblower program. Because my information had led directly to successful enforcement action, I was eligible for a substantial reward, 15% of the penalties Westbrook would pay. The estimated amount made my eyes widen. I wouldn't have to worry about money for a very long time. That evening I visited my grandmother's grave, placed fresh flowers by her headstone. "You were right," I said quietly. "Trust your gut." I could almost hear her laughing. 6 months after the raid, I sat in a coffee shop downtown, reviewing quarterly reports for my new employer. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Westbrook CEO pleads guilty in fraud case. Jonathan Westbrook had finally accepted a plea deal. He was facing 7 to 10 years in prison, and the company that bore his name no longer existed. Its legitimate assets had been acquired by competitors, its reputation destroyed. I closed the alert and returned to my work. The scandal had faded from the headlines, replaced by newer crises and controversies. But its effects lingered in stricter regulations, industry-wide compliance reviews, and occasional mentions in business school ethics classes. Curtis had received a suspended sentence and probation for his cooperation. I'd heard he was working at his brother-in-law's insurance agency in Nebraska. He'd tried to contact me once, sent an email that began with, "I hope you understand." I hadn't finished reading it. Jennifer had landed on her feet, recruited by a regulatory compliance firm where her experience was highly valued. We met occasionally for coffee, bound by our shared experience but not quite friends. Trevor had moved to Seattle, started fresh with a tech company that had nothing to do with finance. And me? I was doing well. The new job challenged me in good ways. My boss valued my attention to detail, my unwillingness to look the other way. The whistleblower reward sat mostly untouched in an investment account. I'd used some to buy a small house outside the city, a place with a garden my grandmother would have loved. I still checked my rearview mirror more often than most people, still kept digital backups of important documents, still trusted patterns more than promises. But I slept better at night. As I paid for my coffee and packed up my work, a young man approached my table. Early 20s, nervous energy, clutching a portfolio. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Matthew Shaw?" I nodded cautiously. "I'm Jason. I just started at Meridian Financial." My new employer. "They told me I should talk to you about their compliance protocols, that you're the best person to explain why they matter." I studied him for a moment. Eager, earnest, reminiscent of how I'd been not so long ago. "Have a seat," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Let me tell you a story about patterns and why they're important." He sat down, opened his notebook, pen ready. I began at the beginning. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't making noise. It's simply refusing to look away when everyone else does.